Escalations are on the way for the FCT era council elections. We're joined now for more in-depth analysis on the events of today, starting with election observer and CEO of TAF Africa, Jide Epelle. He joins me virtually. Good day to you, sir, and thank you so much for coming on. Also joining us as political analyst, Jide Ojo. Gentlemen, good evening to both of you. Let me start with you, Mr. Jide Epelle, and just ask you. I mean, you've been monitoring the process. How would you assess the conduct of vote counting so far, or better yet, the entirety of today? But most importantly, regarding issues of inclusion when it comes to the election exercise for today.
Okay, so generally speaking, I think I'll speak from a couple of perspectives. One is logistical deployment, issue of all the electoral resources that were deployed, logistical arrangement, what INEC were able to do, just very close to average score. The second is accreditation. Accreditation in some polling unit went well, in some there was struggle. The third is the voting processes. The voting process, of course, marred by voter apathy, which the Minister for FCT did acknowledge. Of course, some of his rhetorics can be said to be responsible for that. Now we're in the phase of result management, which is ongoing. Of course, we had struggles with the IReV, uploads and all that. After that, we should also look at the security presence. Many of them were very good professionals. They showed professionalism in terms of how they were managing themselves. I drove around intentionally, passing most of the roadblocks. And, I was treated fairly well. And at the point I stopped, I was giving an interview live, right at the point where they are. And I did commend them and did say to the IG, I hope they are well taken care of in terms of the allowances and food and all that. Now we're dealing with, like I said, result management, which is mostly post-voting process. Let's see what happened. But the last that gave me a lot of concern is public trust in the process. Whether the public has trust. Of course, we saw later today the effect of a trust deficit, which has been the storyline, the big storyline all through this electoral, whether it's this election, past election, that INEC have lost confidence in the people. Or the people have lost confidence in INEC, which I personally today met with the chairman. We were both, in fact, we literally addressed the press together. And I said to him publicly, you need to do something about the trust deficit. The fact that all the issues of 2023 election, the off-cycle election, the absolute total mismanagement of the election in 2023, Jide, my friend, may not wholly agree with me, but that 2023 election and the way and the kind of enthusiasm, the kind of support, the level of participation of youth, that would have been the greatest participatory election in the history of Nigeria, but they mismanaged it.
Let me talk to you, Mr. Ojo. Well, from your own point of view, we've been talking about voter apathy and the trust deficit. Mr. Epelle sort of set the tone or set the ball rolling. So I want to pass it on to you and talk about the voter apathy and the trust deficit that we've seen. It's one thing to come out and cast your vote, but really where the bulk lies in terms of consolidating on the trust is the collation exercise all the way to the transmission on the IReV and announcements of results. As we go into 2027, what notes or what are the high points that INEC needs to be working on to allay the concerns of Nigerians heading into general elections come 2027?
Judy, thanks for having me. I will take it from the point of view that I granted a press interview yesterday on Radio Now Lagos, and I said predictably there will be voter turnout today, and it has come to pass because it's in trajectory of what we have seen. People are now voting with their feet and down voting with their fingers or tongue. For obvious reasons of lack of dividends of democracy, for obvious reasons of perception of distrust in the electoral system management, also because we have failed to do the needful that will have galvanized in a substantial increase in the voter turnout. And by that I mean what other countries have been doing. I have been privileged to observe elections in Nigeria since 1999, and I've also witnessed elections in other countries, at least 5 other countries. And I know that what they do in those countries, we are not doing here. Election holds for 6 hours here. We shut down the system. I traveled and I came back this morning, and on the federal highway, we were blocked. We could not move. For what reasons? Because we are having the area council election. In US, when I went there to observe election holds from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. in many states. And people, it's on a Tuesday, people go about their normal duties. You don't have to shut down the economy. But here we are, we shut down the economy for 22 hours over area council election.
At the risk of making a case for the government, is it their own last efforts to, or their last efforts to sort of strong arm the citizens to come out and vote? Because you could go about your business, you can still be driving about, but then we've seen time and time again, election violence, people not coming out on time. Maybe that's their own way of trying to force Nigerians out to exercise their civic responsibility.
That's a wrong-headed way to solving that problem. The police and the civil defense claim to have deployed 29,000 for this FCT election. If they have done their security mapping, they would know where the volatile areas are, and they can mop up, they can carry out mop-up operation in those places, rather than forcing people in their house. For many places where you say you are restricting movement, guys are just playing Ludo under tree, they are just having fun. Nobody can compel you to go and vote. The bottom line is that, do we even have provision for early voting in Nigeria? Ghana here, Kenya, South Africa, all of them have provision for early voting. There is provision for diaspora voting. There is provision for prisoners to vote if they are not on death row. We don't have such provisions here. So you have election, as Elder Epelle said, in many instances, elections did not start at 8:30 when the INEC communicated that election was going to start. I only received communication yesterday that my polling unit have been moved to another polling unit because of congestion. Why is it happening on the eve of an election? So a lot still needs to be done by the electoral management body. And in terms of trust deficits, it's not just in INEC that people have lost trust. People have lost trust in the entire governance system. Do you want to say that people trust the political parties? Do they trust the security agencies with all the killings going on? Do they trust government? Do they trust the president and their governors? Do they trust anybody? Do they even trust themselves? So trust deficit can go around the table. The bottom line is that we need to do what other clients do if they want to boost substantial increase in voter participation. There must be a sense of inclusion. Do we have a sense of inclusion in a situation where we know Abuja has 2 populations? There is a day population, there is a night population. Half of the Abuja people you see on Monday through Friday are living off of the state. They don't live in Abuja municipal. They come from Nasarawa. They come from Niger State. So all of this after I've already emphasized that this, because many people that have PVC possibly register close to their place of work or close to their place of business, which is not their place of residence. So a lot of work still needs to be done to boost voters' confidence in the electoral process and in the entire governance system as a whole.
Now, gentlemen, we're going to continue this discussion and we're going to talk about voter education. But first, let's go on a short break. When we return, we'll talk about voter education and also, as we go into 2027, some of the high points that need to change moving forward. After the break, stay with us. Don't go anywhere. As we end this conversation here, I want to talk about voter education. Year in, year out, the voter education on the budget, the INEC budget, a chunk of that money goes to voter education. A chunk of that money goes to the voter register and cleaning up of the voter register. As we're going into another election cycle, the general elections, February 20th, whose job is it to educate the voters? Have INEC done exceedingly well when it comes to educating voters? And what is left in cleaning up that register heading into 2027? Let me start with you, Mr. Ojo, because you set the tone, and then I'll send the ball to Mr. Epelle.
Thank you again, Judith. The voter education is already is on a concurrent list. Let me put it that way, technically and legally. INEC has a responsibility, and it has even a department of voter education and publicity. So a whole department, not even a directorate, exists in INEC headquarters, and I believe at the state level, they're responsible for that. But beyond that is also the National Orientation Agency, the media, the civil society. All of us are chipping in our bits and pieces to educate the voters. And I just returned from a trip in Ekiti State where a similar question was asked by one of the political parties we engaged. And the chairman was saying, oh, who is supposed to be responsible for voter education? And I threw the question back to him. The political parties also have a responsibility to educate not just their members, but members of the public. You cannot just put all the voter education responsibility on INEC. How much is the billions that INEC has that can go around and do a sustainable and comprehensive voter education? The money was insignificant. Look at the number of radio stations you have in FCT alone. And land is over 50. You have not talked about TV stations. So if you want to do jingles on a sustainable basis, do you know how many billions you will need to cover FCT alone, let alone 36 states and federal capital? So it's a very capital-intensive thing if you want to do a sustainable and comprehensive voter education. But with bits and pieces from different stakeholders like political parties, the National Orientation Agencies, the INEC, the civil society, even the media, as a corporate social responsibility, if you can chip in your own bit, the society will be better for it. But if the end result of voter education is to galvanize and catalyze better voter participation, what I said earlier on should also, we need to do what other countries are doing. This issue of having separate days for national elections and state elections is very unhelpful. We can have all the elections in one day. 5 elections are not too many. In Kenya in 2022, Kenya has 6 elections simultaneously. So if Kenya can have 6 elections simultaneously, why do you have to separate our own elections across a national election? You have 3 elections on February 20, then you have 2 elections 2 weeks after. That's very, very wasteful and not cost effective. I think if we have all the elections in one day, it also has the potential to increase exponentially the number of voters who will turn out to vote. Aside from other legal alterations that needed to be made to allow for early voting, so that you and I, who are on election duty, will also be able to vote ahead of the main day for elections. Okay. I saw this in Ghana in 2008, and it has been that in their own law. Mr. 2 weeks before, they have people who are going to be on election duty voting ahead of the general election.
I don't want us to go too far, because you said that you were talking about, whose job is it to educate voters, and that it's going to cost billions to run ads. How do you think I get paid, sir? Right? I mean, this is not exactly $1 billion, or I don't get millions on this job. And so we need this money, okay? And then they didn't ask. Don't say it's billions, okay? It's not. Just ask, and there's always a memorandum of understanding. There's also cooperations that can be done, and the things can happen, so we can put food on the table for the technical guys and the guys behind the scenes. Mr. Epelle, do you agree? Because you're removing money from my mouth, so I need ads, so please.
You are doing a good job, and I think I will ask my friend Kayode to pay you more. You're getting more attention to your commercial department. But Jide Ojo had done a good job trying to pinpoint individuals or organizations or corporate institutions that should get involved in voter education and ensure that the citizens are properly educated. But let me talk about strategies for this voter education, because this has been the discussion every year, every moment. Strategically, it's often said that strategy is better than energy. Strategically, we had looking at foundational strategy, foundational issues that can be activated for proper voter education. One of them is civic education. And I was part of the team that worked on the subsuming election, voter education into the civic education curriculum, so that election and getting people to understand their right to vote and franchisement and all that is taught from the even primary school.
Okay.
That curriculum is situated in Federal Ministry of Education.
Right.
And I think they've also started teaching that.
Okay.
But we need to highlight that. We need to give more impetus to it,
All right.
Voter education is everybody's business. It's absolutely everybody's business.
Right. Gentlemen, I wish there's enough time for us to continue, but you know what it is, we do have to pay bills here. We need to go on a commercial break. I must say thank you to both of you for being so patient and just, just in-depth analysis, as always. To you, Mr. Jide Epelle, we're holding you to that promise, to speaking to my boss. We need, it's 2027, we're 2026, we need money. Thank you, sir. And also to you, Mr. Jide Ojo, appreciate you for coming on.